Thank you for the applause. You might think this is completely crazy by the end of it and want to take back your applause, but we'll give this a go. Okay, so I'm here to wrap things up. I don't know for how long. I've been given half an hour by myself because I designed the schedule. If I decide to go over, well, that's my prerogative, I suppose. If you want to go and see the rugby, well, kick-off is, I think we'll be finished before. Okay, so the idea of the day was to give you a bit of history in the morning, some background, and then some archaeology in the afternoon to look at the current situation, or the involvement of the London Shipwreck Trust divers and other projects that have been funded over the years, and then to just kind of leave you tantalising at the end with what could possibly be the future. And I'd like to leave you with a really good positive message, but that message actually may be tainted with quite a lot of negativity as far as the crisis that is taking place currently in the Thames Estuary, which not a lot of people know about, and which we intend to shout as much as we possibly can from the rooftops about, and that we need you to also support and to back, and to help us to find a future. So, I work for the Nautical Archaeology Society. I've been there 18 years now, I suppose. I can always remember my very first week, because that's when the Twin Towers came down in New York City. That was my first week at the NES. Trained in archaeology, then did a master's degree in maritime archaeology as a commercial diver, then worked in land archaeology for a few years before then working at the NES. But my involvement actually with the London is only from 2017. 2016 actually, because on 2016 I was one of the divers that was involved in the excavation, the year 3 of excavation that Heffin referred to earlier that Historic England funded. So I very first dived the site in 2016, was told how difficult a site it was to dive, what the conditions were like, what the visibility was like, and to say that it's a hard place to be in the water as a diver is an understatement. And all credit to anybody really that actually is for fun is wanting to go in there. I was paid for that week and I had a whale of a time. It was fabulous. Since then, in 2017, Steve asked me to become his nominated archaeologist to the licensee, to the principal licensee, which is a voluntary role. I don't get paid for doing this. My employers give me time to dedicate to being his nominated archaeologist and supporting them. I'm supposed to help. I'm not there to hinder him. I'm not there, or them, the team. I'm not there to provide barriers. I'm not there to criticise and wag my finger and say you need to be doing things differently. My job is to try to make their lives easier, to answer questions, to perhaps even open doors and make things possible and make things happen that they or he might struggle otherwise to do. Last year I dived in with him. He gave me a guided tour. He held my hand. He took me around the site and guided me around, which is the first time I'd really had a chance to explore the site in much more detail. I have to say that most of the time I had absolutely no idea where I was or what I was looking at until he then told me afterwards, do you remember seeing this, do you saw that, etc., etc. Because on the excavation week, you spend your whole head in a trench for a week just looking at that, and that's all you see. Oh, that was beautiful, acoustics. You spend your whole head in a trench. So that's how I kind of got involved as his nominated archaeologist. And up until then, I'd never really twigged the issue, the big issue, the fact that this site, Site 2 particularly, probably won't be there in 10 years' time in any real shape or form because of the erosion that's taking place on the site. I hadn't really understood the frustrations that the dive team that were having a jolly lovely time diving the site were feeling while they were having so much fun and joy at one side, but in pain and agony and the plight of it on the other side of just seeing these things destroyed in front of their very eyes. But I very quickly got the idea, so I could understand the situation of what's going on. Okay, so I don't need to do this bit. If you weren't here this morning, it's a ship, it was built, it blew up. Anyway, you missed a great session this morning. Anyway, Richard's video will tell you how it was all built. Okay, so it blew up and it was recorded. We went to see the lottery recently to talk to them about the idea of the London and trying to save the London, and the lady said to me from the lottery in their lovely offices near Tower Bridge and the River Thames, is the London as important as the Mary Rose? Which I thought was a really odd question, because the Mary Rose as a ship in itself isn't really that important. If Alex McKee hadn't gone looking for it in the 1960s and found it in the 1970s, trust me, 99% of you in the audience would still not have heard of the Mary Rose, I suspect. But because he had a vision to try to go and find a shipwreck, an insolvent ships project in the Solent, and then very quickly targeted on this one Tudor ship, the Mary Rose, that had the association with Henry VIII, and then finding it, now it's part of the national curriculum for our country, and schools from all over the country go and visit it every year. Then you have an asset that's part of a dockyard in Portsmouth that brings in £120 million a year, to their local economy in Portsmouth. Not just the Mary Rose, but with Victory and Warren and everything else. But it's part of that historic collection there. And I think, many of you, I'm sure, have heard of the Mary Rose. If you haven't, I'd be surprised. But at a dive show recently in October last year, at Birmingham Dive Show, we had 2 dads who were divers, 2 sons who were divers, 14 and 15. And I said, we're trying to save the London. I said, oh, we heard of the London, never heard of the London. Have you heard of the Mary Rose? The dads, they heard of the Mary Rose. The kids, they said, who's she? They had no idea. Now, you could say, well, arguably it is a person because it was named after Henry Sisler, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, they hadn't heard of the Mary Rose. They have not had their Mary Rose. Their Mary Rose moment doesn't exist. I haven't had my Mary Rose moment. Those of you who heard me give this talk in Plymouth in February will know I'm going to shout and scream and stamp my feet and stamp my fists on the table until I get my Mary Rose. I went to university to do underwater archaeology, got a student loan, which I'm still paying back, to have my Mary Rose, and I'm going to have it, God damn it, if it kills me. Okay, and we'll take you all along on the journey. Right, okay, so you've seen some of these maps before, and some of the imagery I'm going to show you've seen before about the site, about where it is, etc., etc. And its location is a blessing and a curse. If this was in the Scilly Isles, this was down in Cornwall, and it blew up in 1665, trust me, the natural geology of Cornwall and the wreckers would have cleared it. There wouldn't be very much of the London left on the seabed at all. But because it blew up in the Thames estuary, and the visibility and the conditions and the currents and the tides and the ships and whatever else, and the mud, the nice London thick London clay, that's why we have material in the first place. So it's kind of a blessing and a curse. And it's in these 2 sections, Site 2 and Site 1, as you know. And it was all part of, Heffin alluded to, it wasn't actually found by recreational divers, it wasn't found by Steve, and it was never really rediscovered. It was kind of never really disappeared. It just kind of drifted out of public consciousness. It's one of those, the Port of London gateway by DP World was that, just think of that as Alex McKee going to find it. They just happened to kind of re-find it accidentally as part of the dredging works for this port. So the London Gateway, bringing in all your stuff from China, or maybe not at the moment, but anyway, bringing in all your stuff from China that you then go and buy in Curry's PC World or wherever else you go and get it from, or from Tesco's or wherever. Anyway, all of these wreck sites, historic assets, were identified, and the dredge area all the way up here, bringing all the vessels in here. And the London is 7 and 8. And unfortunately, that 7 and 8 location, the Yantlik Channel, is a pinch point for traffic coming in and out. It could not be in a worse place, really, for where the dredging has to take place and where these vessels are coming in. All controlled by the Port of London Authority, so they're controlling the people coming in and out. They're like air traffic control, so that's what they do. And then the Port of London Gateway here, and then Tilbury, of course, over here. So they're the airports, and the ships coming in and out, wherever they're run by, whether they're run by Maersk or Stena or some other line, or the cruise ships, those are the airplanes. So think of it in kind of that respect. Those are the organisations that are all involved in this. And there is a book, there is a publication. If you want to find out more, this is online. You can buy it for, I can't buy it for free, it's about £20 or something on Oxbow Books. Wessex Archaeology did the work for the DP Gateway, for Dubai ports, and the London is about 3 pages in this book about all the archaeological stuff that was found. And think of it like development-led. Development's taken place and the site's been found, and DP World did fund some of Wessex to do the archaeology on it. For me, the issue is that just because the development is finished, just because the port is now open and ready for action, the impact on the site doesn't stop. Therefore, the commitment to mitigate against the damage, the activity that's taking place, shouldn't stop either. If anything, in fact, when the port opens, it gets worse. Because now you've got bigger ships coming in. Now you've got some of the largest ships in the world are now using that waterway. And it's not a problem that's going to get less, it's a problem that's going to get worse, because the Berth 4 is going to be opening soon for the DP Gateway at the Port of London, and Tilbury 2, their second dock, is going to be opening in the next 5 years or so. So the numbers of ships, maybe not the sizes, but the numbers of ships are going to get worse. We've seen this already in terms of where it is, and the issue is particularly this one, Site 2, 5019, as reported by Wessex. This one here that's impacted by another wreck that's down here. This is the navigation channel. So to try to illustrate, I've done a snazzy little animation, which I hope you'll like for this. I'm very proud of this. This took me an hour in the office on Friday. Here we go. Okay, so this is a chart from the Port of London Authority about where the wrecks are. So that's Site 2, the one that's on right on the edge of the dredge channel. That's the other one. These are now protected wrecks. The Heffin report said this, protected by the Protection of Wrecks Act 1973 as for their archaeological significance. And he said the words, from uncontrolled disturbance. Now, I'm going to argue that this is uncontrolled disturbance. I'm afraid that they may have protected status, but unfortunately, we as a nation are not doing our job properly to protect them. And that protection might be burying it in concrete, or that protection might be recovering the whole thing, lock, stock, the lot, like a Mary Rose. Okay, I'm not advocating the burying concrete. Okay, so here we go, this one and this one. So, there they are, that one and that one. This is our deep navigation channel. This is the bit that was dredged and is regularly dredged, has to be dredged, legally has to be maintained by the Port of London Authority so that you can still have your stuff coming in from overseas. And most of your stuff comes in from overseas. 300 metres wide. See how close that is to Site 2? It's pretty close in terms of distance-wise. You're looking at about 50, 60 metres or so. The other issue is that actually there are secondary channels, north and south, 100 metres wide. So these are secondary channels that shallower berth vessels, ships can use for coming in and out, or for undertaking, overtaking, or whatever else that they're doing. As you can see now, both of our sites are in that secondary channel. Okay, so they're not on the edge of the dredge channel. Well, they are on the edge of the dredge channel. They are in the channel. Okay, so this is the snazzy animation. You're going to like this thing. Okie dokie. So the big ones are coming in there, and the propeller wash from it. I was in the Port of London Gateways, I was in the Port of London Authority's mission control room with all the computer screens showing all the vessels coming in. You've got big, big ships doing 16 knots past the site, 16 knots with propellers that are, well, certainly probably twice the size of me in terms of height-wise, each of those blades. The divers describe having to hold on to the site as one of these things comes past. And then just to aggravate that problem even more, there you go, just to aggravate that problem even more, in the secondary channel, sometimes they actually go completely over the top of the site. Okay, so you've got to imagine the impact that is having. It's a bit like, here we go, so this is what you see when you're on the dive. This is generally taken from dive boat positions. I took these photographs, these three, I took this one's from the dive team whilst on the site. These things are coming past regularly. I don't know how many times a day, 30, 40, whatever times a day. Every day of the year, every single day of the year, even on Christmas Day, these things, the wreck doesn't get any let up. If this was terrestrial archaeology, if this was on land, it would be like finding the shipwreck here. If HS2 is built, or let's say a new motorway is being developed, and they find a 17th century house or palace with human remains still in it, with some fine artifacts still in it, eroding out, it would be dealt with, it would be worked, it would be excavated, it would be removed, it would be recovered, or it would be dealt with and worked and then covered over and protected for future generations when we no longer need motorways because we're flying around in space. So, it wouldn't happen, it wouldn't be allowed, resources would be thrown in, the developer would be made to pay to deal with the situation under the developer pay rules. In this situation with the London, years ago, and we're talking decades ago now, 2005 is when the site was kind of first found and protected in 2008. Didn't happen. The developer was allowed to pay a certain amount of money to deal with the current situation and then, unfortunately, has then not had to pay anything else. We're in talks with the Port of London Authority and with DP World, Dubai Ports, and with Tilbury, 4 ports around Tilbury, about their continued commitment under corporate social responsibility to the impact they're having on the environment, on the seabed. It might be out of sight, it might be out of mind, it might be underwater, but quite frankly, I don't care. Okay, I'm going to get off my soapbox. A little bit. Okay, so having referred to the fact that the shipwrecks are at risk register and they have monuments both on land and underwater, and the numbers underwater are small by comparison to those on land, of course they are. In 2019, there were just over 5,000 entries on the Heritage at Risk Register, and on that were 4 shipwrecks, as listed there, as Hefin referred to, the London being one of those. Because of the excavations that were targeted on HMS Invincible over recent years, with multi-million-pound funding that came from the LIBOR bankers, the fixing of the banking interest exchange rate, the LIBOR thing, the Chancellor of Exchequer, George Osborne, before he left office, just gave them £1 million, or £2 million, I think it was, 2 million? 2 million. To work on HMS Invincible, because it was a heritage at risk, etc., eroding on the Horsetail Sands in the Solent, 2 miles from my office. Fabulous excavation, fabulous project. But by excavating it, by working it, by gaining knowledge, by gaining artifacts, by gaining assemblage from it, etc., it's now off the at-risk register. So it is possible to deal with these things, get them off the at-risk register by targeted investigation and excavation and recovery. So our hope is that we can then target activities at the London to get it off the register. Okay, so I'm very happy that the London was in Historic England's top 10 finds of the decade. They published, just before New Year's Eve, they published the top 10 finds made in England in the last 10 years, of which the London is the only shipwreck. So we are talking about the creme de la creme. We are talking about the top of the top as far as shipwreck sites are concerned. A historically exciting, interesting period of time, rich collection, and at risk and at damage, and we need to do something about it before it's too late. We know that work has been targeted at this historic England, or they were English heritage, and then they've now become historic England. The split has taken place. But over £500,000 has been spent on the London since it, and £500,000 is not a small, insignificant sum of money. But bear in mind it was protected in 2008, and it's now 2020. You spread that £500,000 over 12 years, you're looking at less than £50,000 a year. I know from my experience of working on this site and other sites, £50,000 a year does not cut it. Okay, we need to find, as a country, we need to find ways of supporting the dive team, the excavation, the work on the site, getting Historic England some more money from their funders, DCMS, and DCMS getting more money from the Treasury, the Treasury getting more money. No, maybe not. Okay, so, right. Oh God, it's 22 minutes past already. Yeah, bear with me. Okay, so, I've shown, you've seen this image before, and in fact you've seen this. At the moment, what we're doing is we're picking off the scraps. Even when you put a trench on a site that's 2 metres by 2 metres wide, on a site that is 35 metres long by 15 metres wide, probably 4 metres deep or 3 or 4 metres deep in rich stratigraphy, we are just picking off the pieces, really, at the moment. It's such a shame. If research-driven, if proactive work, excavation was targeted at this site, you know, the Tampion reel could be as good on this side as it was on the other side, because we'd have actually recovered it before it was eroding out to the surface. The gun carriage, imagine if the gun carriage had been found through targeted excavation originally, back in 2005, when it was being refound during the development work, and actually this kind of marine boring organism wouldn't have had a chance to eat away with it because it would have been buried. So actually it would have been in even better condition had we done it back then, rather than just waiting for it to arise onto the surface. So I'm going to, my second part of this, having hopefully now sort of made the point that there's a crisis taking place on the seabed and we as a country need to try to step up to this, is to look at how we do that. At the moment, I would argue that the wreck is not, although it's called a heritage asset, I would argue that actually it's a heritage burden currently on us, on the agencies that are responsible, so through Historic England and Department of Digital Culture, Media, Sport, and the country. It's not really an asset that we're making the most of. We're not generating income for the country because of the shipwreck, unfortunately. It's a burden on us. It's costing us money, not generating money. I want to flip that. I want to find a way of turning that round. Simon Thurley, who used to be the chair of English Heritage, presented at Gresham College many years ago saying heritage has to stand on its own 2 feet. And that's fine, I have no problem with that at all. If you run a castle, and you can get visitors, and you can pay for it, you can have a car park, you can pay for access, you can put up a fence, you can have a gift shop, you can have a cafe, and all that kind of stuff, then great, absolutely. Turn it into a sustainable enterprise. Try putting up a fence around the shipwreck. Try building a gift shop. Try building a cafe. Try coming on a guided tour, if you want to. You can't do it. It's impossible where it is. You cannot turn it into a heritage asset where it is. We have to turn it into an asset by removing it from the Thames estuary. By taking it out of that at-risk environment where it is now. If we leave it there, it'll be gone. So we've got to remove it to turn it into an asset. It's the only way, I would argue. It is an asset, of course. It fulfills all of these requirements in terms of significance into it, in terms of it having to be taken into consideration, material consideration in planning processes. Of course it does. I think we can quite argue that it's an asset. But is it an economic asset? Heritage undertakes, studies are undertaken annually looking at the economic impact of heritage to our economy, and we can look at, in 2019, £31 billion of gross value added into our economy. So that's the use of goods and services into our economy. Still quite a small percentage, but it's bigger than car manufacturing in our country in terms of heritage. In terms of tourism visits, now I know flying isn't PC at the moment, and planes are going to have to get cleaner and less noisy, etc., etc. But tourism, whether that's domestic tourism or national tourism, is how we like to spend our time travelling around the world or travelling around the country, looking at things and exploring things, generates money, generates jobs, flows money into economies in a local area. You coming to Southend and spending money in a cafe, or spending money in town, or with the train, or whatever else, or accommodation overnight, brings money into here. The Mary Rose is a case in point for this, is how you turn a heritage asset into an economic asset. Now, the Mary Rose is by no means perfect in any way, shape or form. There's nobody here from town, but they are still struggling. They still need your donations. They still need legacies. They still need to fundraise. They still need to get grants. They're not public. They're not funded by the state. So, of course, they're not a pure, driving enterprise that's supporting millions of jobs, etc. But they are able to contribute to Portsmouth's local economy in a very positive way with job generation. I'm sure lots of you remember this. I'm sure lots of you remember the lifting up moment and the cradle snapping and all that kind of stuff, and Prince Charles being involved. My former boss at the NES was one of the divers that took Prince Charles on the kind of guided tour around. He was like, do I turn his hair off? Do I turn his hair off? And the Mary Rose was phenomenal as far as marketing, and it was on the Christmas edition of the Radio Times that year. More people watched the Mary Rose come up in 1982 than watched the Morecambe and Wise Christmas special, which was always the big thing that people used to watch in terms of Eric and Irving. It was a phenomenal thing. And it's in our consciousness now. It's become part of our DNA. My legacy, and I hope our project's legacy, is going to be that in 30 years' time, the same is true of the London. We've done something positive and deliberately targeted. We've built something special for Southend-on-Sea and for the nation that people will remember. Okay, hopefully some of you went to this, a fabulous exhibition that was held and put on and designed with Kira and Southend Museums, supported by the council. And we were there. I was there. We were there for the opening, and it was. I think it was a lovely insight, a snippet into what might be possible as far as displaying the material here. But we did our launch. So we launched our £2,000 a year fundraising campaign there. Phil kindly came along and presented and was there to support us. We got a bit of local press coverage, and it was our platform on which to launch, I suppose, into the local community. And even then, in July, we knew we were coming here in March to do this. So we need to raise the 200,000, and I'm going to keep badgering on at you about 200,000, so that you go away and realise that, and tell your friends, and when you're having your dinner parties, and you're having your dinner parties with rich lords and ladies and business people and whatever else, and they're saying, oh, what are you doing? What's interesting you? Who needs my money, etc. If you've got a credit card limit with 5,000 or more, I've got a tap machine here that we can take a donation straight away to support it. And the idea is to target 60% of the funding on the diving and the conservation, and 40% on trying to design something really big, really special, something iconic for Southend-on-Sea that deals with the problem. We're trying to build a consortium of organisations, individuals, stakeholders. You're right there, Rebecca. All good. We're trying to build something. It's a legacy project for this, and some of the organisations involved have kindly come and they're in the room to hear about this, to turn it from a burden into an asset. Don't worry, I'm nearly. Okay. Okay, so these are the organisations that we've been courting and we've been talking to and who are kind of jumping on board. Looking at this from the heritage management perspective, of course, the archaeology opportunity and education side of things, both locally education as far as schools, but also education as far as universities. And the university side is the archaeology, it's the history, it's the STEM subjects, it's the arts, it's the heritage management courses, the science, the technology, the engineering and the maths that are all involved in this archaeology underwater. And try to make something really special. We've been talking to and getting positive support from advisors, including the dock port organisers and the Port of London Authority, engineering companies, consultancy firms that work in both the maritime and the defence sector, the architects. Perkins and Will are the architects that designed the new Mary Rose Museum. If you've been to it, that opened about 10, 15 years ago. They designed that museum, and they're on board, and I'll show you some of their visuals in a second. Snowbarts, who run the airport here, about the London, Southend, and our shipwreck's called the London, it's in Southend. It's kind of perfect marketing type. Royal Museums Group, who run Greenwich. Steve said that there's part of the London collections on display. We'd like more of it to be as a platform to sort of show people that there is more in Southend. And then City of Amsterdam Museum will make sense in a while City of Amsterdam. And then the Vaasa Museum. Fred Hocker and the Vaasa Museums absolutely on board and supporting us about how they've managed to turn, in their instance, very easily, they've managed to turn an amazing shipwreck into a massive tourist attraction for Stockholm. Okay, so let's go back to here. And trust me, it's the last 10 minutes, then you can go home. Okay, so this is where the situation is now. We could excavate the site. At the moment, we've got the issue of we can't even recover a single object unless we make a telephone call, say it's at risk, get a response to tell us that actually we can then recover that object, just that object, nothing else, so that it can then come and be conserved. Of course, by the time we've made that telephone call, got back on the site, there's a chance that object could be gone. So that's where we are now. what I'm going to take you on is what we could possibly do and then what maybe we could do. Yeah, maybe we should do. We could excavate at Mary Rose style. Mary Rose, 11 years it took from finding the Mary Rose, Alexander McKee's divers, the first two to find the Mary Rose, to lifting it and putting it in a dockyard. 11 years. More time has passed now since the London was refound to 2020. We're now looking at 15 years, and we've still got a problem going on underwater, which I find crazy. But we could excavate at Mary Rose style. We could do 3 years of intensive investigations. We could be out on site for 6 months of the year, over 3 years, with a team of 15 divers, not on top of each other with string, of course, but 15 divers working the site, but in the dark, murky waters. My issue there is you have no scientific control, because you could finish diving one day, get blown up by the weather, and the tides and the spring tides are not going to get back in the water again until 4 days later, or even a week later, or 2 weeks later, because of the tides and storms and all these storms we're having. And the objects that you were excavating when you left the dive are no longer there, because they've gone. There is no control in that whatsoever. So why don't we take it out of the Thames? Why don't we actually remove the whole thing, lock, stock, the lot, and excavate it in a facility somewhere on land? Literally, recover a whole shipwreck in a box with all its artifacts, everything else. Stick it in a facility and then excavate it in controlled conditions. Because you can't do it when this is coming past. These things, I know it probably looks big, but actually if I show you the next picture, that is that ship. It is massive, absolutely massive. 300 metres long. Its draft is 14.5 metres. We dive it on a high tide in 18 metres. This thing draws 14 metres. Imagine being on site when that's coming past. Holy moly, the propellers are just over there. This thing is absolutely ginormous. So what we're proposing doing is something the Chinese did back in 2007, which is this is our problem. This is our shipwreck here on the edge of the dredge channel, the propellers that are causing the problem. You could actually box this shipwreck in, insert a floor, cover it with sand, insert a floor, recover an entire shipwreck, the lock, stock, the lot, in a box. Bring that box ashore and then excavate the box. Why not? You're going to tell me money. I'm sure you're going to tell me money. Why you can't do it. Trust me, if someone had told Sir Tim Smith he couldn't build the Eden Project in Cornwall because of money, then we wouldn't have it. You've got to have a vision about what you want to try to achieve. We may not get there, but we're going to try our damnedest to do it and have our Mary Rose moment. Way! We're going to get our Mary Rose moment. Well, you're giving me 5 minutes, Bill.
Well, being generous.
Are you being generous? Because I'm 3 minutes over already. Okay. Anyone who's taught a course with me will know I'm terrible. Okay, so I overrun all the time. So we're going to recover our shipwreck in a box. So maybe it's not that lovely bit where the cradle collapses back on the shipwreck. But if you want that, I'm sure we can orchestrate something where... Oops, we dropped it. Did you know the Mary Rose actually came up the night before in darkness? So they did a practice run to make sure that it would actually work on TV, because they were a bit nervous about doing it on live TV. Anyway, that's a little birdie told me that. We want our Mary Rose moment. We want Southend-on-Sea to have this, where the largest cranes on the biggest ships, etc., come and recover it, and the media frenzy that's surrounding this whole thing, and put Southend on the global map. Okay. This is what the Chinese did. They've done it already. 2007. I mean, this 13 years ago they did this. They had a box. They put it on the shipwreck. They banged it into the seabed. They put a floor in. They recovered the entire shipwreck. They had a vessel that can lower itself in the water by getting rid of its ballast water and then refilling again and lifting up the box. And the box comes ashore. There's a pontoon here going into a building, and the building has been purposely built for the box. The box comes in, and they shut the doors. Here it is, coming along shore, all these dignitaries that are not there for some reason. I'm assuming the ceremony ended, and they all got. Anyway, and then they actually chose to excavate their box dry. I'm going to suggest something ever so slightly different. Why not still do it with divers in underwater conditions where we can filter the water like an aquarium and have nice blue water, and you can have divers on comms talking to kids on the surface or by satellite around the world. Anyway, so there's a box. If you go to China, well, they're not allowed to. If you could go to China, you can go and visit this museum, and you can see it's all to do with the Silk Trade routes. It's a merchant ship where all the cargoes of the merchants are inside the shipwreck. So it's been done. Proof of concept exists that this can be done. It's done in 30 metres of water in the China Sea. And if you look at this image of the box, their shipwreck is in this box. They initially intended on flooding the entire thing. This is a swimming pool here with windows to look into the swimming pool, another viewing gallery to look down into the swimming pool. This is what they were meant to do, but they didn't do it in the end. They bottled it. I don't know why. I need to find out why they bottled it. The Dutch are considering doing a very similar thing. They want to go to Hastings, or to Balverheid Beach, more precisely, near Hastings, and recover the Amsterdam, and lift the Amsterdam with all its contents still inside it, and sail it back to Amsterdam to put it into a building in Amsterdam, in the docks, in the port, and to flood that and then use divers to excavate the shipwreck using divers. They're 3 years into development. They're slightly ahead of us. Our challenge is to be British. Oh, 2 minutes. Our challenge is to be British.
Warm it up with the red one.
Let's Should we do a show of that? Okay, I'm nearly done. Okay, so go back to Southend. Perkins and Will, the architects, Chris Brandon, who was the principal architect who did the Mary Rose new designs for them with lottery funding and other funding, has been helping us, working with us, his and his team from their offices in London, and helping us try to understand what we might be able to do. I can't tell you where. I don't know a location of where it's going to go. If that's your question of where would this building go, I don't know. It goes on land. It goes maybe on the end of the pier. I don't know. I mean, let's think crazy. Let's think big about where this goes. And you've got conceptual ideas about what it might look like. You've got the viewing area. You could be overlooking the Thames estuary. You could maybe be even overlooking the explosion site. And people hold up their iPhones and they pan it round, and boom, the explosion takes place. The ship blows up with people flying all over the place. Maybe not. Okay, you get my idea. This could all be the most. This could be Southend's green building project. Designing a building that is carbon neutral, that generates its own power supply through carbon capture and solar panels and wind panels, and also use it as an architectural opportunity to create something special for Southend that then other companies and other heritage activities and visitor centres, etc., can learn from. Put a Costa coffee down the bottom. I don't care if it brings in, maybe not Wetherspoons, but maybe a Costa coffee. Anyway. Here you go. So here's our divers in the tank, and they're on comms, and they're communication streams. We've got a student from Germany who's come over to learn how to do underwater archaeology in Germany, who's speaking German through satellites to a school in Germany. We've got someone from Brazil who's speaking Spanish to a school of students in Brazil. Why not? You've got divers in the audience who would, I'm sure, love the opportunity to come and dive on and learn and practice their skills, underwater archaeological skills, helping out. You could laser scan the entire thing at the end of every day to get you 3D digital information. You can have viewing areas, the first dive of the day, divers, David Bob, you've got to go and clean the windows. Oh no. Anyway, he's only doing his job as a chef. You're only doing your job. I know. I'm not, this is it. It's the end. Right. Okay. And of course, you can engage on a one-to-one level. Really inspire people to fall in love with the ocean, fall in love with heritage, fall in love with activities like diving, and it's a good sport. Keeps you fit, keeps you healthy. I can't say it's the cheapest activity in the world, but it certainly keeps you fit and healthy. And then have something special. Maybe dry it out. Go and reuse the box to go and save something else. Go and save Site 1, or go and save another shipwreck site that needs it, and build something phenomenal in Lowestoft, of all places. Somewhere amazing. Anywho, so that's what's technically possible. That's the kind of the vision that we're touting to, or proposing. That we're not saying it's going to happen. We're saying, look, we should at least be trying for this. We should be trying for the most amazing thing we can create from the resource that we've got access to turn it really into an asset, not a burden. I'm going to finish any second. Okay, so if you haven't worked out already, this is a fundraising activity. And if you want to pledge your support, as in sign something that says, I believe it's important, then on the webpage there is a digital one. We've got sign-up sheets on the desks outside. You've got the pledge board outside of why you think it's important. Because if you don't think it's worth doing, and if the residents of Southend and the wider area and Essex don't want it, then we're wasting our time, quite frankly. Anyway, so there's that. If you want to run the London Marathon in April, if it goes ahead, if you want to run the London Marathon for the Save the London campaign, then let us know. I'll sponsor you. Okay, and I'm sure other people would. If you want to dress up as a shipwreck and go running, or a Samuel Pepys or something else, I don't know, you could do it. Or simply, for Christmas, if you were going to raise money for a donkey sanctuary as your Christmas present, and you want an alternative, then any donation, big or small, is most welcome. As I say, we'll be targeting 60% of the activities and the funds that are raised at the diving and the conservation, and then 40% at trying to get the big idea or any big idea off the ground. Follow us online, follow us on social media, drop us an email, share the love, all that other kind of stuff. Phil, I'm ready. Done. Finished.